So, everyone's talking about Despia with the new structure deck and whatnot, breaking it down card by card and talking about the deck strategies and all that stuff, and if you're new around here, it's not really my style. So I wanted to have a bit of a discussion about the deck, but more so about my favorite deck of all time, how it matches up against this deck, and where it could potentially find itself with this new meta. But to know that, we have to have an understanding of what Despia does, or as my man Dr. Gordon would say,
to overcome something, you have to understand what a perfect engine it is. It's how you fight disease.
So what do we know about Despia? Deck's very fast, makes first turn fields, and has a good fusion spell that they can be a bit reliant on sometimes. What are the deck's, as I'll call it, choke points? Fusion summoning, first turn fields, and graveyard recursion. So how do we use that information to our advantage, and how do Gravekeepers benefit from this? So for starters, with Despia, it's a deck that has power but has issues when you start to cut off its resources. If you have, for example, Necrovalley in play and you're able to break their field, that can be enough to win the game in a lot of cases. Decks nowadays tend to be very top-heavy with a big turn 1 field that says, fuck it, here's my best, see if you can break it. Which is why Kaiju are one of my favorite decks to play right now. I mean, Kaiju over the DPE and then Slumber the field. Point being, with decks being so reliant on turn 1 fields, it's something you have to be prepared for. I mean, in some respects, the game is a bit easier because decks are more predictable. Yes, decks have generic engines that they can add, but they're the exact same generic engines. Like, you know exactly what to expect. I mean, if you go second and you get hit with Scythe, I mean, are you really surprised at this point? That's kind of the format we're in. Like, I hear from friends that don't play the game anymore, like, it's all turn 1 fields, and I totally understand it's not fun staring down negates all the time. But I've always viewed Yu-Gi-Oh! As the perfect encapsulation of that old phrase, adapt or die. Like, if every deck makes a big turn 1 field, then just build your deck to go second. Now, Gravekeepers aren't necessarily a going second deck, but that doesn't mean there isn't something to take away from this. What are some cards that answer or help prevent turn 1 fields that Gravekeepers can utilize? Well, there's Dark Ruler, Kaiju, Mystic Mind, Red Eyes Fusion, Ash, Dark Hole, Raigeki, and there's obviously a bunch more. Hell, I've heard about a guy from the Gallivanting Gravekeepers Facebook group that's actually won his locals a few times playing essentially Dogmatica Necrovalley stun with Royal Tribute and Commandant. Like, is it out in left field? Yes, but is it effective and hilarious? Also yes. So, like, when I see Gravekeeper lists like this, for instance, marked as competitive, I just want to...
Fuck you, Bogdan. What? I said fuck you! And your eyebrows!
Don't get me wrong, we're all learning, and I've had some jank lists on my channel in the past. I mean, I accidentally posted a 38-card deck list once. But part of learning and growing is receiving honest feedback. I mean, this kind of shit is not gonna cut it against decks like Despia, but this might. This list topped about a month or two ago, so it's a bit out of date, but it's a good jumping off point, I feel, and it plays well into what I'm saying about GKs nowadays. Cookie cutter doesn't work. Your deck needs innovation, power, text, like some kind of combination of the three, or it's likely going to get smashed. And so decks like this have all their bases covered. Like, it handles turn 1 fields, it has consistent openings, it makes plays turn after turn, and it also doesn't lose its ability to go first. And even some of the cards that necessarily don't have great interactions together, like let's say Imperial Tombs with Red Eyes Fusion, if you have Red Eyes in play with Necrovalley, it doesn't really matter anyway. Like, some of these cards are just so powerful that it doesn't matter how good your opponent is at Yu-Gi-Oh!, they're probably just going to steal a game. Floodgates are also great options for this kind of mentality because they can potentially break fields, but you also want to draw them going first. It's essentially what does the most while requiring the least. That's kind of how I look at it. Like, if I had to summarize this whole thing in one bullet point, it's efficiency. And, like, that's just kind of the way of the game now. If your deck can't make its own advantage or drastically cut off mechanics of the game's opening turn, you're likely to struggle with turn 1 fields. Like, that's why I'm enjoying playing Rock and Shock right now on the side. This is my list if you guys are curious. But I love it because it's so fun against turn 1 fields. They'll put up like some kind of 3-4 negate board, I summon a Mato Wato, hit Raigeki, and then they just rage quit. But this all circles back to the same point, adaptation and efficiency, which I think is the way of the game. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it. Really hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a little different than the content that I've been making so far, so if you liked it, let me know. Give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.